Most CPGs are lying to themselves. They think that everyone knows their product, everyone loves their brand, but the data tells a different story, and it's costing them billions. Quick challenge, go to Amazon right now, search for a product you love. Tell me, does the page really speak to you? Does it just feel generic?
New buyers is always struggling. They never actually were building content specifically to say, hey, we want to attract new buyers.
Meet Chris Perry and Oskar Kaszubski, founders of First Mover and veterans of Kellogg's, Kimberly-Clark, and Reckitt. They spent years as the puppies of e-commerce, biting ankles to drag Fortune 500 into the future. Now they're helping brands survive the AI revolution. In this episode, you'll learn why most AI projects fail, how to turn your content into a growth engine, and the one metric that really drives change. And when I asked them what happens to brands that refuse to adapt, Oskar didn't hold back.
They put us into a crate that we don't bring those.
Hi, I'm Imtiaz Ahmed, and I help executive leaders create value with the smartest minds in artificial intelligence. For over 2 decades, I've worked with some of the world's biggest consumer brands to drive growth, optimize performance, and rethink how work gets done by fusing together human creativity and machine intelligence. You may not realize it, but behind every major innovation in retail, media, and technology, there's a team wrestling with how to make AI real and valuable inside massively complicated matrixed organization. Welcome to the Flat Intelligence podcast, everyone. Today I have the pleasure of having two great friends, Chris Perry and Oskar as well from First Mover. I'm going to dive straight in. Being two people within the e-commerce industry for so long, I'm very curious to understand your backgrounds and how you came to launching First Mover. So Chris, let's start with you. What's your story? How did you get here? And why First Mover?
It's a great question. And I would say if I broke up like the stages of my life, I would say I've nerd is underlying all of them. So I just go ahead and disclaim that so that I don't have to, defend myself later. But I would say I was a musician as a young person all the way through school, but also was always really inspired by really great teachers. So at some point, I thought I was going to be a teacher at one point. My mom was a teacher. My wife of 20 plus years has been a teacher or a writing instructor, director of a writing center. And so I had a lot of passion for what other people had passion about that was something cool that you could learn and then transfer and get other people excited about. Then I had the chance to get into the CPG space after business school and really cut my teeth at Reckitt on the brand management side, but then volunteered as tribute into e-commerce, where I got to help build the original COE at Reckitt, which I know you know very well. Now, I don't want to say we did the awesome work that you all did later, so I can't claim credit for what came after, but we tried to lay at least a decent foundation that you didn't have to clean up too much of, but really enjoyed helping build that early COE, becoming what would be the next stage of like the change agent on the ground leading. I got to do that again at Wellness Pet Company. And then, I want to steal his story, but Oskar and I got to join forces together at Kellogg's and got to lead that e-commerce change there. And so I got to be the change agent, if you will, but then I still had that passion for teaching. And so for a short stint, I got to be at Edge by Essential, which became Flywheel Digital. And I got to focus on executive education and really practice that craft of not just being the driver of change, but enabling the change across many people through different formats and whatnot. And then now going back 5 years, the pandemic opened up a huge vacuum of a need to learn something very, very important that was already important, but now was more important than ever because shoppers were forced into omni-channel behavior, not to mention then AI and all these not so new topics anymore that are the next area of change. And so I would say then we became first movers and educators to drive that change. And honestly, I don't want to say that that's the final stage that we'll be in, and I don't want to speak for Oskar, but honestly, if you are the reason we didn't call ourselves e-commerce mover or something like that would have been a sad brand name. But the reason we didn't call ourselves that was because we wanted to be ready for whatever the next change was. And that may mean that we have to learn some of those changes along with the change agents we're trying to empower. So I would argue that first mover is our theme for the rest of time. It'll just be what is that next change? In this case, AI enabled commerce, connected commerce. I mean, there's so many buzzwords out there today, but we're very excited to continue owning this independent community and platform to drive that change. And really, I think we still go back to being change agents. We're just applying it from outside of a company and trying to help move the industry forward a little bit further. So maybe we're industry first movers versus company first movers.
Very cool. Oscar, what's your story?
Well, my story is much simpler. So when I was growing up, in Poland, we basically had two channels, and there were state-run channels. So the best escape was basically reading science fiction books. So that kind of gave me like this whole thing. It's like, I got to look towards the future, right? So that's number one. Number two, when I was growing up, I wanted to buy a computer, didn't have the money. So all I could do is like, look at there was prior to internet, catalogs from Germany, where you basically just look through the catalog, send the order using a letter and etc. Right. And I was like thinking, it's like, would it be so cool to like click on that page and then magically would arrive at my doorstep, right? I'm not saying I invented the internet, but that passion to basically buy things digitally, buy things remotely was basically embedded. So think about it is, so like I was like one of those people that constantly is looking towards the future. And like, no matter what, like if my happiest day would be to get frozen for 500 years and then have 24 hours to trying to figure out all the new technology that is out there in the future. And hopefully it's not fire in a cave, right? But let's say flying cars, robots, whatever, you name it, like I'm all in. Like that would be probably the happiest discovery day, because as long as my family is not listening. But what I'm basically saying is like I'm like one of those people that basically is driven by the future, which then created a problem, because when I was actually working at both Kimberly-Clark, Mondelez, Kellogg, running e-commerce, and then at Pharma, I realized people like Chris and I, we are like new puppies. We come in, we basically piss on everything, we try to bite everybody to get attention, because what we want to do is we want to basically bring them into the future, but they don't want that. So sooner or later, what happens with a new puppy? And I have a new puppy. That's why I have that new puppy, reference. They put us into a crate, right? Because they want to contain us. They want to make sure that we sleep, that we don't bring those new ideas, right? So that's why I think people like Chris and I, we're actually more destined to do more good outside of the organizations, coming in, versus in the organization, where organization looks at people like us like we come in, we show like a glitter bomb, and everybody's like, wow, this is amazing, but nobody wants to do anything with it, right? From outside, what we can do is we can pull actually at different levers, because we can actually build this entire community for those who come after us, to keep building it forward, and basically being able to move the space much quicker and have a much higher impact, versus if we were just working internal, inside the organization. So I think that's really the key for us, the driver for us. And I think actually I would argue that over the last 5 years since firstmovr became in its current, kind of a framework, we actually probably done more good versus just working for a single organization. And it's, and it's gratifying, because, we've been actually impacting a lot of people, trying to build them up, trying to democratize e-commerce knowledge and the future knowledge, right? When it comes into that.
I was going to say, I love that analogy, because everyone wants the puppy, but not the work that goes into caring for the puppy. And it doesn't mean that they don't want to work. I mean, everybody's working, but everyone wants the benefit, right? There's a more aggressive quote that we've been using for the digital shelf, but everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die, right? But I think a nicer one is everyone wants a puppy, but no one wants to clean up the tinkle spots, right? Like, so the point is, but I love that analogy, because then by default it's like, oh gosh, well, this is really disruptive, this is really uncomfortable, even though I love the fluff and the cuteness, but like I need to contain it. And then the problem is then that holds us back from the thing that we were meant to do, right? Which was ideally not piss on everything, right? But ultimately bring joy and bring change and bring positivity and get people back up and getting outside and smelling the roses, so to speak. So I love that analogy, Oskar. We should use that more often.
I'm curious to understand, Oskar, what was the first thing you purchased online ever?
I mean, it's going to be sad, because it was probably a Scandinavian crime book on Amazon at the end of 1990. So it wasn't nothing exciting, because at that time, Amazon was basically just selling, books and DVDs. So it was either that, or it's probably one of those, late 90s show. Hopefully it wasn't Dawson's Creek. Hopefully. So, but I have to look it up. Amazon has all the data. I gotta download it and figure it out.
The funny thing is, I got online because my mom didn't give us allowance, and so she said, if you're gonna make your own money, you got to make your own money. Find a way to do it, like obviously legally, right? But so I would bike down to the library and get on the internet, and I was able to, with her help, create an eBay account where I would buy. I didn't actually buy for myself. I bought things, flipped them, and then resold them, and that's actually how I made most of my money for, and I was an early Amazon 3P seller on the book side when I got into college, because then I was buying books, used textbooks and stuff from students and then reselling them online, which actually paid for my room and board. So I wish I'd bought something more fun like Oskar, but I had to support my extremely luxurious lifestyle through my eBay. And
actually, I just looked it up, and I would definitely get deported by Trump administration nowadays. It was a book, Monsieur Ibrahim and Flowers of Quran, by an Oskar and the Lady in Pink. It's basically a novella, which by the way, it's like, it came out like a very good book, and it's by Eric Emanuel Schmidt. So yeah, that will definitely be on the fly out.
Yeah, I've had an Amazon account since like 2007 or 2008. And you can go all the way back into history and see all the things you purchased. It's fascinating. The first thing I bought online was actually a 2-pack album, because I didn't want to explain to my parents who 2-pack was in the physical store, so they could buy it for me. So I just used their credit card and bought it online.
hey, that
So, you're solving multiple problems, right? Moving on, in terms of being change agents, and literally, coming into organizations and showing them the art of the possible, and then, helping them realize all the things that they need to change. How do you move past that excitement phase and like really help people understand and formulate the action plans that they need to put in place in order to realize the value that, we're promising them through e-commerce and through digital?
So Oskar and I both, having done this separately, together, and then separately, and then together again at First Mover, from the outside, there are lots of things, because obviously everyone thinks they're really unique, and they're not actually unique. And I say that not because you aren't a special person and that you matter, but like everybody's, oh, my company's so unique. No, you're not. Like, you, in the moment, you have a unique challenge that maybe is not like, and I like to use Sesame Street science, like which one is not like the other. Right now, you are currently focused on this, and you're a few steps ahead of a lot of the others who are focused on that, right? But you are not that unique. Now, everybody has unique culture and a way of working and all that stuff. That's fine. But I think obviously whether we're upskilling through a training, or we're helping build the capability, or we're consulting, or whatever, or we're just talking to friends in the industry who are suffering with challenges and we're trying to help them, I think everyone has a unique situation of what they need in that moment. But often we're asked, and Oskar, you may have a different take on this, but I really do believe in, and this is something we kind of like put in as a mantra, even though we didn't make it up, is that we are what we do, and we do what we measure. If we want to do differently, or if we want to do Omni, or we want to do AI, we want to do change, insert change here, we need to measure change, right? Whatever that may be. And that's not a theory, right? And I use this example a lot, but if you want to change what people care about, you got to change what they're measured on, right? So the challenge is, whether it's a retail media assignment, or a digital shelf opportunity, or an AI integration across multiple strategies, I don't mean that the KPI is always the exact same, but if you change, or I don't want to say change the KPIs, if you add and prioritize the right KPI, knowing that everything matters, but certain leading metrics and then lagging metrics matter more at that point in time, everything will end up happening. Now, it doesn't mean you know how to do it. It doesn't mean that you have the right training in place. It doesn't mean you have the right talent in place. It doesn't mean you have the right structure or the right process. But if I suddenly said you have to launch a new product in a very different way, that going backwards, right, you'd have to relearn it, and thus you'd have to get people that knew how to do it backwards. And we were at a presentation recently, but it just came into my head because my family owns a plumbing supply distributor business. So plumbing has always been very near and dear to my heart. And when I was in my brand days, I was on toilet bowl cleaners and septic system treatment at Reckitt, very exciting brands, very sexy categories. But I always kind of said, if I told you had to become a plumber, or you couldn't have what you want in life, and you're like, really? I have to become a plumber? Yeah, you want to be a plumber. That's a really good paying job, career, in fact. You don't know anything how to be a plumber, right? But if I measured you on that, then you would go start watching YouTube videos on DIY videos on how to do it. You'd probably break your bathroom to figure out how it worked. You would realize you need to get an apprenticeship for you have to have a certain number of hours and time logged with a master plumber. and then you'd be on the real job practicing, and then you'd have to get the partners and the tech and the tools and the learning and all of these things to actually get to that weird outcome that I just told you is now your new measured goal. So I really think change is, you can measure the change itself, but then we also have like our framework of change, like that isn't the big four consulting firm theory based one, but like a practitioner's checklist of change that you can actually measure. Am I doing the right things that would lead to the change? And I can scorecard that. Plus, am I measuring AI-driven sales or digital shelf excellence correctly? So it sounds simple, and I don't mean that the work to get there is simple, but if I change the metric, we change the what and the who and the how we do it to get that metric. You have to pick the right metrics, though. That's the hard part. That's where we get paid the big bucks, obviously, as an industry to do the right thing. But I think that's missing a lot because we think it's all about strategy. Yeah, strategy kind of informs the metric, but the metric holds you accountable to the strategy, right? So or the metrics, right? It doesn't only have to be one, but ideally you have singular metrics so that you're not trying to achieve 50 things that can conflict with one another.
One of the things I find people get lost in is really understanding what they need to focus on. Like, you can't take an approach for a very mature brand that's been around for a long time, has high market share, high brand awareness, etc., and then apply that for brand number 3 in a category. How do you navigate that conversation where, an executive or somebody has moved from one CPG to another CPG, and then they try and apply all the same things and they realize it doesn't necessarily work, specifically in e-com, because even between retailers, everything is different.
But I think, one thing that you need to also consider when you talk to an executive, that there is a big difference between what I would call a core knowledge, which means really understanding the aspect, versus a vibe knowledge. Executive operate on a vibe knowledge level. Something has to feel right or it feels wrong. It doesn't matter what it is. They will never take the time to dig down deep to truly understand whatever they are trying to understand. Doesn't matter if it's digital commerce, AI, whatever, is something new. It's going to be constantly, they're going to be, because, they're like 90% of their basically job is protect their job, play the politics, and figure out maybe one or two things to get them ahead. Maybe at best, maybe one, maybe a half, right? In terms of all of it. So I think fundamentally, we really got to understand is like, who do we talking to? How do we present? And be even ready for like some nonsensical questions, right? So think about it as like, I think, 10 years ago, a lot of the sales executives were asking like why people would pay for last mile delivery, because they didn't understand the aspect of convenience, right? Now we are having a lot of those conversations, which is like why people are using AI to basically, discern through thousands of products and making a decision, listening to AI as a recommendation, right? It's a lot of this is not really necessarily to sticking to them. So we almost have to create like this emotional feeling for them that this is right directionally, right? The other thing is what we know works very well when we say, you are not the first mover, you just one of the first, let's say, runners of the massive marathon, right? Nobody wants to be first because they don't want to be wrong. But if they hear that a lot of their peers are doing the same, they feel much more comfortable to move forward, right? To take time. Yeah, it's more real. Like nobody really wants to be a first mover out of the executives because they don't want to be bold. There's too much at stake, right? They, think about it as like, too many of them went through the trenches to get to that number one position of being a CEO or chief customer officer by taking really a bold decision, especially with CPGs that are very established. And when I was actually working on Kimberly-Clark, the CEO of Kimberly-Clark always said is like, Oskar, CPGs are slow moving ship. Like no matter what, whatever you do, you're not going to move the ship fast enough, right? So you have two options. One of them is try to move the ship as slowly, or like redirect everybody to something else and then move the ship, and then they come in, the ship is already moved, right? In terms of all of it. So there are always kind of like those two ways of actually looking at things. And I think fundamentally, that's probably the hardest in our job, because at the same time, like we almost have to change the vibe of whatever we're changing, but as well as then we need to go back to the organization and say, hey, you really have to take time. And Chris will tell you all along is like, what are the expectations when we come in and say, let's say do a 4-hour training, and people expect that they're going to have a 2-year worth of MBA in those 4 hours. I mean, is that really realistic?
It's crazy. It really, and I'm not being mean to, like, we respect everyone. I mean, and everybody's extreme. I mean, everybody's earned their place in the industry, but it's a lot of times like, Chris, our whole sales team needs to be omnified. Okay. And again, we're not here to upsell anything. Like, we're more marketers and content and practitioners than we are sales people. But, we're obviously trying to listen to what they need. And it's a lot of times, so we need our team to be omnified. You're like, okay, so you want them to be experts. Okay. So, like, what are you looking for? Well, I'm thinking like maybe a quarterly series, like maybe, but no more than an hour at a time. We can't ask them to learn, like to spend that much time. You're like, and wait. So like quarterly, like once a quarter. Oh yeah. I mean, max. So in 1 hour per 3 months, you're going to become an expert by when? Like, knowing that it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at anything, according to the age old saying, right? So but there is this expectation that, like, I'll be Yoda if I just watch the movie, right? If I just watch at least the one with Yoda in it, or maybe just the Mandalorian, maybe one episode, and I'll be Grogu will give me enough, enough of the Force to become Yoda. But Oskar brought up a funny point. I actually had an executive, and to be fair, I mean, I think she's spot on with where most CPG execs are. She said, Chris, we don't want to be first. We want to be fourth. And it was such a specific number. I joked with Oskar that we wanted to become firstmovr.com. Like, we would be, that's, we also thought about just knowing that not everyone will move at all. We might want to also have like first loser or last mover. Either one of those would be options too. But fourth, and I was like, fourth? What do you mean? And she's like, well, again, the first group truly is the tip of the spear. They broke through. They're doing something different, but there's a lot that they could fail even if they did it right? And then, but they get blamed for the disruption, right? Immediately. And then the other two, the next two who tag on, may not have known that the other one was going to break through, but they add in and they get blamed too. But by the fourth person, no one's paying attention. You just get to riff off you get to draft behind them and then do it, like, learn from their mistakes, which is actually an awesome game strategy. But it wasn't about being the first. It was just about having a growth mindset and a first mover mentality of approaching this. But I think that's but Oskar brings up a really important point, and this is not to criticize anybody. We are all humans. This is human psychology 101. But most people operate in a system that does not measure you on impact. It measures you on efficiency, and which then contributes to bureaucracy, and then again kissing bottoms and echo chambers and short-term goals and self-preservation. And I don't mean that we all have to go charitable here and like, oh, I'm just going to do stuff now for the good of the industry. But most people are making decisions for themselves, right? And we all do that. But if enough people do that, then you're not actually worried about the long game. You're worried about whether I hit my quarterly numbers so I get my bonus and then I get promoted, and then maybe one day I'll do better, but I never get a chance to because I'm always still following that next self-preservation goal, right? Especially in a world of disruption where there are risks of losing your job if you don't keep learning. And at some point we burn out a little bit too, because it's like, oh my gosh, can I relearn everything again? I thought I already had it down. And so it's scary, right? So then what do you do when you're in fear mode? You defend, right? You self-preserve even more. So it's a little bit of a vicious flywheel, right? That actually works against change in human psychology, but definitely in CPG.
One of the things that I've noticed is there are lots of companies where, because everything is so siloed and the KPIs are so limited, that making a change means incremental work. And within the bonus cycle, you might not realize the upside of the change that you're making. So you're going to be doing all of this work and then there's no payoff.
Right.
So people are almost like disincentivized for making any long-term fixes or even medium-term fixes because we don't need to do anything right now. Everything's fine. If this one big brand in our portfolio does well, we'll all get max bonus. But, I only manage a small piece of the pie. I don't need to worry about it. which is concerning because if you look at volume growth within CPG, especially at like the premium tier, volume is slowing down, COGS are going up. If these bigger brands specifically don't differentiate, they're going to get eaten up when small players are coming in left, right, and center. So the industry needs a lot of change, but no one wants to take the bet. It's a very difficult and precarious position to be in for such a big, industry sector. I want to move on to, thinking about AI, not as magic, but as the muscle. What's the most common delusions brands have about AI? And what's the most painful wake-up call you've had to deliver in a boardroom?
Oskar, why don't you start? Because you're doing a lot of that. I have a couple things, but I'll build on you.
Yeah, so I think, so there are a few things happening with AI. Number one is, I think, and Chris is going to be talking about the magic bullets, but I want to kind of move past that a little bit. The biggest change is that AI is almost becoming the same way as digital, that it means so many different things to different people. So that's number one. Number two is, I think a lot of executives are actually not really understanding that it's changing so much. Even if you actually look at last week, what has happened, right? With Google I/O, with Cloud4 launching, with Johnny Ive and Sam Altman buying for billions of dollars, creating that I/O company, etc. There's just so much change happening that it's really hard for them to like comprehend that this is actually, this is not a little bit of, it's a little bit of a different revolution when we had with computers. A lot of people came in the 90s and they basically had this desktop and Windows and Office products. They were learning this, right? But it felt like it was a destination versus just like a moving walkway that just keeps on moving, and you just got to keep up, right? You gotta adjust your speed. So I think the challenge, what it is they are not really understanding is that they can actually sit down for 1 hour and learn everything what they need to do. Guess what? In a month, in a week, it will change. Fundamentally, things will just kind of keep going forward. So I think it's a little bit of a challenge for a lot of those brands to actually look at it and kind of understand where to focus their attention. And some of the progress is staggering. I mean, all you got to do is just go on Google and start searching, or YouTube, start searching for VO3 videos, when it's actually generating video better than Sora from OpenAI, and it's actually adding sound to it. It's fundamentally will change how we actually marketing the product, what's possible, what's not. And I think that's good. That's very exciting, in terms of all of it. But it's again, the biggest danger is that this is not a destination. We're not gonna peak anytime soon. And I think that realization, where are we in the curve, is absolutely critical to say. It's like this can have much people, like we scraping like the beginnings of what's going on with agentic commerce, with agents. We scraping what is possible with drone delivery, self-driving cars, robots, etc. Right? There's just so much ahead that we could actually do to change how actually consumers are shopping. And consumers are already starting to change, as we were discussing, using AI, for example, for discernment which product to buy, which are not. But this is just the beginning.
One thing that's interesting, and by all means, AI has real, not just hyped potential, but real potential to do a lot of things to aid us, right? To assist us. I think it's been said a lot recently, but I think it's part of the delusion is that, like, I got AI, where's the gold? And you're like, but you had no gold, you had no mines of gold to mine, right? So it's only, garbage in, garbage out, right? Even just, and Oscar's touching on something too, like, some of this is like, even if you're not the intended shopper or the user, like, especially if you're an executive and you're not your ultimate target audience, like, I don't want to say they don't have intellectual curiosity, but at some point I don't want to say they matured past it, but they moved into, I'm managing, I'm enabling, but I'm not necessarily digging as deep, as Oskar said. So the problem is, by not being intellectually curious, you're not actually even walking the shelf or walking the tool yourself to see, like, what does it do? How does it break down? I mean, when I think of like shopper facing things, right? How does Rufus actually work? Like, do it. Like, even if you wouldn't do it. So then you see, and you do it for your own brands or your categories. So you go, why aren't we showing up, right? And then again, apply Sesame Street science, because you're not going to get the black box yet on how it works, but you're going to, it's because we're not even talking to, we're not showing up as a recommendation because we don't have that content in our content, right? So we're not for sensitive skin because we don't talk about sensitive skin anywhere. No, none of our consumers talk about it. But the other thing that's really interesting about this is AI technology and capabilities are a level beyond traditional just digital tech and whatnot. But one great example I was thinking of is when I was on the brand side and we were getting into digital at Reckitt, Bazaar Voice became a capability to collect and generate and syndicate all these reviews, because we suddenly realized that the digital shelf and reviews at a minimum were really important validation tools as social commerce and social media really started to rise. But what was so funny is I remember Bazaar Voice had this really cool maturity curve chart where they were like, well, first you want to collect the reviews and then you want to share them or syndicate them. But then, you can use them to inform your entire campaigns, and then you can like mine them. Like there was a whole mining side of like getting the insights out of them. Like most brands didn't do that. Like, and so they had this really cool like thought leadership model that was real, but no one went that far. And part of it was like people weren't measured on it, right? Once people kept switching jobs, so the people that learned how to do it weren't doing it. I mean, so there was a number of change issues, but AI is the same thing. Like if you use Visit, right, for visual AI analysts, we work a lot with Visit and their team, and they do some really amazing work. But like, okay, great, I hired Visit. All right, what happened? Why isn't my content better? Well, you have to measure your content, figure out what would make your content better, then design that content, and then upload it, and then measure its incremental impact, right? Like AI enabled a different level, a next level capability, but your ability to learn and understand it, test it, implement it, resource it, measure it, optimize it, and then measure it again, and then optimize again, it's the same human part that still needs to happen, right? The AI just came in to help a component of it. So I do think there's AI almost, the hype is like, it'll do my work for me. So where's the work? And you're like, you still had to do the work. It helped you do it better or faster or more effectively or more, or scale the insight mining that you would have had to do manually, like, as you know well. So, I mean, it's just, but we still haven't quite gone to Oscar's 500 years from now where like, it really is just think and it happens, right? Maybe that is what happens then. But right now it's think, AI can assist, maybe it can help us do a little bit. You still have to go implement it. So we've seen a number of leaders, even in some of these early implementations of real AI, either in-house or through an outside vendor. I don't want to say they didn't fail. They just didn't go as far as they thought because they're sitting there thinking like, didn't AI do it? And you're like, it did the part it was supposed to do. You have to do the rest.
Why do you think it's the case that it's so difficult for brands to make shopper-focused or shopper-centric content when there's just so many tools out there to do so now?
Oskar, I'd love your build because you're a little more blunt. Sometimes I have to be like really diplomatic when I respond.
Yeah, I'm one of those puppy that just bites and then says sorry versus the other way.
But we are puppies. I mean, so we are.
Yeah, but I'll tell you here's the biggest issue. Number one is most of the brands have been building content specifically for navigation because they believe everybody knows their content, everybody loves their brands, everybody knows their portfolio, their product. They don't need anything else. They never actually were building content specifically to say, hey, we want to attract new buyers, which, when you actually look at Circana or Nielsen data, new buyers is always struggling, when it comes into it, right? So that's number one. Number two, there's this issue that content is only influencing e-commerce sales, in digital channels, but it's also influencing in store. People, if they have questions, they're going to go online, they're going to look at reviews because they want to try to learn something new, right? And I actually learned this very early on in my career because I was selling a lot of those vitamin, minerals, and supplements categories. And, a lot of people, like if you go to the shelf, the packaging is too small to truly explain what the product does or not, right? So that's why those microsites work beautifully because people could just go in and then, that started that subscription phase, etc. So I think fundamentally, we almost have to like reshift and get out of our way that everybody loves us. It's not necessarily true, that we don't need to be getting new buyers. The brand recognition is 99.99%. It's like there are different cohorts. And I think a lot of the people are realizing is that with the new generation that grew up on TikToks, on social media, they're not necessarily the same things work like from previous generations to the next generation, right? Like this is a little bit of a reset. And that's why a lot of those smaller brands are actually winning quite a bit, because they are not actually wired the same way. It's like, all I got to do is just, find me, right? And make sure you picking the right product and that's it, right? You got to actually do the selling for it. So I think, we have to kind of change kind of our approach to content and to actually work with retailers and figure out, because one thing that we haven't done in e-commerce is the personalization, right? Despite that, we actually do have technology now to segment the shoppers, the ones that know the category or the ones that are new the category, maybe ones that are, they used to buy the category, they are kind of lagging behind the category, etc., and offer them a different ways of engagement. And I think that personalization based on shopper missions is something that we can definitely solve for, using AI and technology.
Well, and Oskar, one thing that you and I have seen, and we've seen this in the past too, but I mean, and being in CPG experiences and outside, but also through our NCAPs, which is our free digital merchandising awards of distinction. We focused on PDPs thus far across every category thus far, with some big focuses on now beauty and healthcare and household and grocery. But what's so interesting, and I think some of this derives from the original content came from my mass broadcast advertisements. So while I might have been a product that was only really for women or only for kids, or I still was kind of broadcasting to everyone, hoping that some of the fish that might want to jump in my net would jump in my net. And the thing is we've gone full funnel, and we now can connect this all through retail media and the digital shelf and the connected commerce journey. The content on our digital shelf also has to be very specific and shop, just like media now can. I can still spray and pray, but I really do have to go it's not just women 25 to 54. I'm adding in personas and their personalities and the shopper missions and the models that might fit those missions that are different than just I can get it anywhere. And so part of the issue is everyone's used to spraying and praying to everyone. And then we also have this concern that, and I think some of this comes back to short-term measurement as well. I can't afford to only focus on one group. Because I might not get my immediate impact and my sales lift, but also I don't want to exclude anyone, right? We're in this world of, and I'm big on inclusivity and everything. I like that. It's not a political discussion. It's, you don't have to be exclusive to be exclusive, right? I can talk to just Oskar and his persona and not say no one else is allowed to buy my product. I'm just talking to Oskar. And there are very few brands, when you look on their digital shelf or even in their media sometimes, that look like they're, outside of the fact that maybe I'm the only one seeing your page, they're not really talking to me. And so one example that we found that I thought was just such it's polarizing, but it's a fun one, right, is Dude Wipes, right? Dude Wipes is a butt deodorizing wipe, if we don't want to be TMI, right? But it is going after this unusually niche audience of 49% of the entire world, right? Which is men, okay? It can be used by women. It's not going to say no, but it's not called dudettes, right? It's called dude. It's for dudes. And to be honest, they're not going to get every dude to use it because they're adding to the regimen that's maybe, I'm fearful to assume that there's some men out there that don't even use toilet paper, let alone wipes, but it's to complement your current regimen, right? So the point is, though, women probably aren't turned on or attracted to potty humor, slightly middle school to early high school tone from dude, even though for guys who aren't saying we are that young and immature, but it's kind of funny. And you know what? Hey, it made me think, it edutained me and made me think about my personal hygiene and being cleaner for the benefits that would have for myself and the people that I love or that I'm trying to attract. So women, and it was funny, our judges, we have half female judges, half male judges. It was funny to see their comments because it wasn't biased in a mean way, but it was almost, you could tell the female judges weren't they weren't being included, right? So whereas the guys were like, this is so cool. So it was funny to see but in that case, the product is not unique to one audience. It could be for any audience, but they positioned it for one audience. And they were inclusive of what is actually a very scalable opportunity, but not trying to say, hey, dude and dudettes and little dudes and little dude. They're not trying to be everything to everyone. They're trying to be one thing to one person, one group. And by default, then they could grow into something bigger. But like Oskar said, those challenger brands have pie is the sky, right? I mean, they could go after anything and it would be upside. So they go after one starter group. They can be a lot more specific and niche because the niche is big to them. But the big brands they don't want to alienate anyone, right? So I don't blame them for that. But to be fair, they're going to be ankle bitten away by all the challenger brands by not owning a persona or personas that are actually their audience. And I think it's not that it's hard to do. It's that we're not measured to do it. We didn't historically do it. And then we're afraid to alienate someone when we're not actually alienating. Like I can use L'Oreal Revitalift. It's not really targeted to me. And I think I could always stay young forever. But I'm looking pretty dapper with my Barbara Walters filter on my camera, but it is, but I could use it, right? Like it wouldn't turn me away. But it's not going to, but I think there's a brand personality that a lot of brands actually have, like on their brand website or in their social media, that isn't a filter they put on their PDPs or on their media, outside of the fact that maybe the only people that ended up on the PDP were those people, or that saw the ad were targeted, but they don't explicitly talk to them. And if you essentially said, Oskar, people like you are going to really love this for all of these reasons, I bet you get a lot more conversion, because Oscar's going to be like, me, you're right. Like I would, right? So I think that's an important part of it. It's not that you can't do it, especially with AI. It's that we have to get past being afraid of doing it.
But I would argue that this is where actually we have this new age of relationships with AI, right? And some people would even say some of those relationships are borderline romantical. AI can actually extract any characters from us, like any character traits. And it's like, you could actually argue we could live in a, where AI would say, it's like, hey, this solution is for Chris, or this solution is for Oskar, right? In terms of all of it. So I think, it's from a sellability perspective of our brands and products, that just opens amazing opportunities in the future in terms of what can happen, right? And how do we actually balance the act? Because I think it's going to come down to trust. It's going to be a little bit like AI is going to have 3 strikes. If you recommend a product, just purely money grab, don't give it to me maybe once, and then second time he does it, third time, and it's like, I'm never going to listen to you again, right? It's going to be the same way as you would get any other recommendation.
One amazing example that I've seen from a big brand is Unilever. So Cif cleaners, right?
Okay.
So men on TikTok with white sneakers have been using Cif to clean their white sneakers. So this became a trend, and this is an entirely new cohort that I doubt the Cif marketing team was ever going to target, but it's a whole thing. So now you could think about usages of your brand in audience-based cohorts, and rather than organizing your brand from a segment point of view, like, this is my liquid cleaners, this is my powder cleaners, this is my toilet specific cleaner, you arrange your brand by cohort. And depending on how big that cohort is, how big that frequency or usage of your product is, you can fundamentally change the way that you do your marketing, not based on what my COGS profile is or the segment that I've set up on SAP, but how people are essentially buying my product. And I think this is where AI can really help you, because in terms of understanding that cohort, men with white sneakers that want to keep them white all the time, I don't think a brand marketer is going to get enough input to actually understand what does a marketing plan for a specific cohort need to look like for that. How do I keep them constantly engaged? What's the right influencer strategy to be authentic to this specific audience? And then how do I commercialize that from a personalized experience point of view when this specific consumer goes to shop on Amazon or on Omni? So we have all of these different outputs. It's not necessarily just for nail biter small brands that are niche and small. There are all of these use cases out there. It's just who's really going to be first to monetize this and get after it, right? So I want to pivot here to the matrix framework that you guys have developed. It sounds like a really cool way to manage chaos. What's a recent real world example of where using the matrix framework, it's changed the outcome from a brand that was destined to fall behind?
Yeah, well, and Oskar, I know you've got a couple examples that, just for anybody who's listening who can't visualize it, you can go to everything on our website's free, but firstmovr.com/matrix, MAITRIX, because again, we aren't the movie, even though we'd like to be, but AI is we misspelled it on purpose. But we actually have 2 models, but again, to your point, it's to organize chaos, because honestly, the first step is there's so much coming at me, it's easy to leave it as hype or theory or ideas and not actually anchor down. So generally, when we're organizing all the news and all the trends and everything, we kind of have an actual matrix, like a box with 4 parts of kind of with the shopper at the center. And then arguably right now, it's at least in today's millennium, it's like very emerging and current hardwares that allow us to access AI, and then how AI impacts different elements of our professional, personal commerce lives, right? And so when we talk about news or any like developments, we always talk about it in the light of where that falls, and then where capabilities can help different companies, vendors, et cetera, fall. We also have like a loop, which is very synonymous with the consumer funnel, which is not really a funnel, but is an infinity loop if you do it right. But we had kind of our 8 Ps, if you will, to really build on the 4 Ps that people are very used to, on all the ways that AI can be integrated in, knowing that you may not be able to do all of them at once, but it's about picking some thoughtful tests to, be it in the early days. We basically, the Ps are platform, through what do I sell, like through the retailer, the channel, the device. Proposition, what do I sell, which can be informed by AI increasingly, especially review tools and sentiment analysis and other ideation platforms. Presence, how do I show up? Do I show up? Promotion, how do I drive demand and capture that demand? Performance, which is how do I measure all of that, like daily, and that underpins the loop. And then the other Ps we kind of lump together were partnerships, process, and people, right?
People.
So
you missed the people.
Ultimately, I don't want to forget people; they're the most important part. But AI assists the people. But the reason being is those last Ps underpin all the other Ps, and give us that competitive advantage. But it's when people see that, it's like easy to start organizing, and we go much deeper than just the image, right? Of like all the capabilities, the strategies, what's today, what's tomorrow. We have a whole playbook on this, and we do a lot of content around this to help democratize it. But the key is, a lot of people look at it, especially leaders, and they're like, "Oh my God, I can't do all that." You don't have to do all of that. To me, you're not doing all of it today. So you're already behind. That's okay. You'd be ahead if you just started by leveraging an AI vendor tool to test automating your content, your media content creative, so that you can scale. I know like Pepsi was able to do that with some tools that took their number of campaigns from like in the 30s to like 200 something that they could do scalably at a more personalized level with AI. So it's all about like picking thoughtful objectives that AI might be able to help you solve. But Oskar, I mean, I know we've got a couple examples that I know you've been working on.
Yeah, I think, one of the things is that where we actually focusing at the moment is the presence, right? Because of a lot of the Gen AI tools that can actually influence the content and then responds to what Amazon is actually doing with Rufus, Walmart with Sparky. So I think, we are just trying to help the brands to kind of understand this, how to scale it. One of the things is there's definitely a challenge that, it's actually very easy to create a perfect process for one SKU, but then try to do it for 10,000 SKUs. That becomes a massive issue, right? Organizationally, because you almost have to like kind of imagine that all of those cog have to have the same energy to keep plowing, because the minute you actually tell the legal team that you have 10,000 SKUs coming, they're going to freak out after 5 SKUs coming, right? If 5 SKUs, that's it, Oskar, 5 SKUs, no more, right? So I think, we a little bit of in terms of the scaling the AI, the biggest issue that we have is basically to be able to kind of understand is that this is organizational change. This is not one single department that we can actually pilot AI, right? So this is like one of those things that is like 1 + 1 = 3, where we have to get everybody aligned to a new ways of working, because it would be not any different than in the past. A part of organization would be using computers and part of the organization would be using paper. Well, guess what? This is not that compatible with each other, right? How are we going to actually make a progress kind of going forward? So I think we have to kind of build this with the way that we can actually show early wins to get people excited, to actually understand that this is a shift. Because at the moment, if you actually talk to any of the CPGs, what's the number one conversation? It's not AI. It's the mandate that people need to be at least 4 or 5 days in the office. That's like number one conversation. That the times of COVID are over, right? Nobody really wants to talk. It's like, how are we going to use AI, right? What's going to happen with all the people? Like, which jobs will transition? No, everybody now talks about the work from home. So like, there's always something, a distraction, to actually, it makes it very hard to get entire organization on board.
So you're both change agents, but the real change is messy, it's political, and it's slow. What's the most underappreciated ingredient in a Fortune 500 company to actually adopt something new?
I know I don't want to beat it. I have 2 answers, because the first one we said before, but the right measurement and then the accountability to that measurement, right? We have like a simple framework that we use in trainings or whatever, just to help people see like for any change, it's group awareness, right? Am I aware of AI? Am I aware of Omni? What does that mean, right? Not everybody learns, but they need to, right? The next one is group discussion. Are we actually talking about it? Like, is it on the agenda and not at the end, right? Too many times was e-commerce the last thing on a business review agenda, when it was the most important thing we could have been talking about at the time, because it was the only driver of growth at the time, right? But it's group discussion. When you start talking about it as a group, you've got to measure it, right? We can't just go, so how's Omni doing? Oh, it's good. Okay. Like, how do I know it's good, right? So we need a scorecard and we need metrics, right? So which start to hold the group accountable. But ultimately, if you think of like crawl, walk, run, sprint, soar, so to speak, you get to, well, now it's individual accountability, right? Because, hey, Oskar, Sarah, Sally, whatever, the group can't do the thing that you're in charge of on your account. You need to do that, or you need to, on the RACI model, you need to be responsible for it, at least see something, say something to the right capability partner, right? So and then ultimately it's kind of like individual empowerment or enablement in the sense of like advancement. It's not just, am I measured on it? Like, am I going to get my bonus because I did this, right? Am I going to get promoted because I did this? Am I going to keep my job? Because I don't like to make it the negative part, like just survive, but those things matter, right? Everyone has a different motivator, but those things matter. So that measurement accountability is key. But I'm very, like, if Oskar has lots of ideas, and I have a lot of ideas, but he has some big ideas. And sometimes like once he gets me like excited about it, and he has to deal with me being a puppy on the ideas, I get very excited, and like, I want to move fast. Like, once I'm bought into it, I don't need a lot of convincing. I'm a first mover. Like, I want to go. But I really think we are still dealing with humans on a curve of change, and there is a patience empathy that needs to happen, right? So I don't know that a lot of leaders have that, let alone that often we have to be empathetic and patient with them, let alone that they're not always patient and empathetic with their own people when they finally get on board as well. But like, change is hard. I mean, one of our taglines is change is hard. Let's change that, right? It is hard. It's uncomfortable. No one wants to risk it all for something they don't know is really a proven step, even though there's some of us that are a little less risk averse. So I do think there needs to be a strategic patience and empathy. But if you're a really strong change agent, you may have laid out the 8 steps of change from a practitioner perspective, a checklist. You can measure the change and move people over that curve a little faster, even though you're being patient with them. But like, if we wait 15 years to make CPG AI driven commerce a thing, a lot of companies will be gone. Like, I because it will be moving faster than the 15 years it took for our era. Like, we were the boys who cried wolf, and the wolf was coming. He stopped for lunch and to get gas along the way. Like, it took a little bit longer, right? So but it was happening, right? But AI will happen faster. It's already happening, and it will impact faster. We don't have 15 years to wait and for you to be thriving at the end of that. So I don't want any company to fail and all the people that would be attached to that. I mean, like, altruistically, I want to save it. Like, I want Noah's Ark to capture everyone, right? Like, who's willing to get on, but you have to be willing to get on, and you have to, we do need we need a process to build that ark so that we can, or in Oskar's way, like a spaceship, right? So we can leave Earth and get to Mars, right? So it's, but there is a human element that any of us impatiently waiting to change still need to patiently wait for the others to catch up, but there are ways we can advance them a little faster.
So Chris, you're the weird AI of e-commerce, and Oskar, you're the future space farmer. If you could write a parody song, and by the way, I love all of your parody songs on LinkedIn, to transform or to really shift the industry's mindset, what would it look like, and what would the hook be for the song?
So I'm writing one right now. I wrote the lyrics, but Oskar he keeps sending me ideas, so he may have another one too. But if you liked Disney Mulan's "I'll Make a Man Out of You," I removed the man part just so we can be inclusive of everyone, even though Dude White still wants the men. And I wrote, and I made it, "Gotta make Omni brands out of you." Now, Omni being not just Omni, but AI inclusive, right? We can make AI brands out of you too. But what I like about that song, the intent and the context behind it is that, the Chinese army is prepping for the Huns to attack, right? And so there's an imperative that they be ready for this war, this battle, this this invasion, right? Or they won't survive, they won't thrive, right? And so but obviously they have to make do with the resources that they have and people that are untrained and unaware and unready, if you will. And so I like the song in the sense that it is a little more of a come to Jesus song, like, of like, because the main character in that song is criticizing Mulan, who's dressed up as a man, and these other soldiers for not being ready, for being pathetic, for not being strong enough and not having the endurance. So I don't want to criticize anybody, but I really like that song, and it's speaking to like now's the time to become an omni brand, and omni will obviously hopefully set us up to be AI brands or whatever the word is in the future. But I really like that one I'm working on because I felt we need that like kick in the butt. And Donny Osmond sang it in the original Mulan, even though he wasn't Chinese, but that's okay. He had a great voice, but I want to do him justice in bringing that to life. But Oskar had some cool.
So I'm trying to convince Chris to do more video, right? So that's why you actually see on LinkedIn a little bit more video, but also, to actually probably use some of the e-commerce elements, like looking at e-commerce sites, in this video. And I give you an example. There's like this old Depeche Mode song, "Enjoy the Silence," right? All I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here in my arms. Words are very unnecessary. They can only do harm. And I'm like, this is what we got to do. All I ever wanted, all I ever needed is here in my cart. And here is, for example, someone trying to buy Nintendo 2, that bots, fighting the bots, right? And then you can do tariffs are very unnecessary. They can only do harm, right? Because the price is going up. So like, I think, what I'm actually thinking is like, we could actually do a lot also to do not only social commentary where the space is, but also like in the current situation, like in terms of some of those fluctuations and things that people, they basically have to put up with.
We're big on edutainment, not because we want to make it superficial or less meaningful, but because, to be fair, there is a lot of really good substance out there, but it does start to become vanilla, which actually hurts the whole point of the amazing substantive education, because it's like, another webinar on how to use AI for the digital shelf. Like, honestly, there's Oskar, and I see this all, there's such an overflow of real and or AI assisted content that then the content and it all looks the same. It all looks nothing like, again, we almost, as
and it all looks AI generated now anyway.
Right. As B2B marketers,
you can't tell difference.
We need to be shopper centric. So we thought that some of our edutaining approach to things in the past, making light of things to make people think about it differently, comparing things like our use of stories or funny analogies, whether they're perfect or not. But I thought Oskar's puppy one was actually quite appropriate. We're going to use that a lot now. But it's the reality is people need something to go like, I hadn't thought about that. Wait, I'm that character. They're not going to admit it to anybody, right? I'm the bad guy there. I'm the silly one there. I don't want to be that. Let me change, right? So, but also like with singing, LinkedIn doesn't have enough music. We want to create eCommerce the musical, and so we're trying to do that too. So,
I'd love to be a part of the music.
Yeah, no, very few people opt in, so we would love for you. Everyone likes to watch it and wants.
I'll be a tribute to it.
We'd love you to be in it. So,
so to wrap up. Let's say the two of you were starting a brand new CPG startup with no legacy systems at all. How would you build your AI stack from the ground up? And what would you not automate at all?
So I'll start with that and let Chris. So a few things. Number one is like, no matter what, you got to choose sides, right? With the technology stuff. Either you're going to sit in the OpenAI camp, you're going to sit with Google, you're going to sit, Microsoft is actually right at the moment actually playing all kinds of sides. I think Grok is even on Azure when it comes into that. So you either way have to kind of pick a side and kind of stick with it, right? Like probably the easiest one to implement as a startup would be actually sit within the Google camp, because, the Gemini 2.5 Pro is very capable. I think it's at the moment is even, winning the LLM arena, both for the web dev and then the regular ones, etc. Right? So it's a good starting point. And a lot of the customers that we actually deal with, they're sitting very embedded within the OpenAI, and then they're trying to kind of copy this with whatever Microsoft and Google, depending what's the backend is. But the one thing I would definitely refuse to automate is AI is like a little bit of like a teenager. driving. So my son just turned 15 and he started to drive. Oh my God, this kid gets cocky so quickly, right? And it's very hard to course correct to make sure that it's not gonna drive hallucinate into that he's a now Formula One driver. And I think the same thing is with AI. Is like we gotta constantly look at the output to see if there is any creep out there in terms of when it comes into quality. Because one of the biggest things at the moment that we are dealing with it is the consistency, right? You can actually ask the same query, the same prompt to the same AI, using API and get two different results, right? So how to really get the consistency, and that's why the recent, for example, innovation with Google, generating the images, the consistency finally is better, right? So like that hallucination is not becoming a little bit of an issue, right? So no matter what, you will have to double check the data. You would have to like do a little bit of a random spot check. Like it's almost like feels like you have a 100 employee, but then randomly spot employee number 27, employee number 73. The same way you got to look at any data inconsistency. But that creates a little bit of a problem when it comes into, for example, in the vendor world at the moment, because a lot of vendors offer AI that basically is just a glorified wrapper, right? It's just a wrapper of data, etc. But they don't understand the data. They don't understand the core data, and they understand is the result that I'm actually getting, does it make sense or does not make sense? The challenge that I have is, which is my talent and a curse, I see a lot of those inconsistency very easy. And I get frustrated by them, right? So I walk around and let's say see 3 different holes and one of them is slightly different. I can see it and I cannot unsee that. And then I'm thinking, what happened that this hole is different, right? In terms of all of it. But you have to have this mentality when it comes into your data and not to fully trust it that it's AI, that you're using the best model, because there is a massive difference if you use, for example, OpenAI 4.0 versus, for example, 03, and they have all different, cases, right? So having a really good handle on your data is absolutely critical.
I would build on what Oskar said, and just a couple things that pop in my head is, and this is also something that sometimes isn't present in a lot of companies. So I think this might be a little more ambitious or aspirational, but what I would not let AI do is define my purpose, mission, vision for my company, right? I think doesn't mean I can't inform it. Like, hey, I'm in this space. I'm launching in the vitamin supplements category. I'm trying to go at, like, I have some initial prompts. AI, am I missing anything, right? AI could assist me, right? But at the end of the day, I've got to be the one knowing where I want to end up, why I get up every day, why my ship is sailing at all, and what milestones I'm going to be achieving on my way to that vision, right? Even if AI assisted some of those pieces or fine-tunes, because I use AI a lot, like, hey, here are my ideas, here are my 4 things, am I missing anything? Oh, Chris, those are really great. There's actually, your 4th idea might actually be 2 things that you could, like, so sometimes it can help me articulate my idea better, but I still need to have it. I also think the fact that we call out customer service in a Zappos or in a Chewy.com or in any of these companies that really prioritize that, it's not that they didn't use AI or tech to scale customer service, but in some cases they really did resource. One of the most important touch points is when I'm having a problem, and I'm not picking, I have it, we flew an airline this weekend who sent us an email before we flew saying, hey, the plane you're going to be on may not have all of the services we normally offer. Apologies for the inconvenience. And then no way to write them back, no way to contact them except to go to the FAQ section, which isn't going to answer the WTF did you do to my plane, but also, like, why didn't you proactively just say, hey, I know this is an inconvenience. Here's $25, like, towards the flight. Like I didn't get it back. Like, you gave it to me to use somewhere else, but just I know that's giving away money, but then you've negated any frustration because you've honored the inconvenience, and at least you've given me a token of thought versus, hey, you might be a little frustrated about that since you're about to sit on the plane for a number of hours with your kids who don't now have, I know this is first world problems, but a screen or, entertainment while we wait in the delayed on the tarmac and all that stuff. So, so customer service can be scaled with AI. I would still have humans. Like Chewy.com used to measure like their customer service on how fast the whole team was measured on literally the minimum number of seconds or milliseconds it took to answer any form of customer service outreach from a consumer, which meant you always got a human, whether it was social media, a phone call, an email, and that there's a reason they stood out for that. So I think that's really important. Again, your mission, vision, purpose. And then, I think AI can assist a lot of the other pieces along the way. as long as the human is sitting in that driver's seat. I mean, there are some automations on the marketing operations and content development, but a human does, remember, it's garbage in, garbage out. So if there's a human with, treasure versus garbage, putting it in or basing their, you have to be an art director of sorts, right? You may not be the one that's actually filming it. You may not be the one that's actually doing the costumes and the outfits and the picking the talent completely, but you've got the vision for what it's going to look like, and you're helping prompt it to get there so that you get the best outcomes, so that you win the critically acclaimed awards at the movie. So I think there's some pieces there that humans need to be leading to serve humans best, and then AI can assist it. It's a good question. I would say, to be honest, what's interesting, and I try to read a decent amount, but I don't always read just about AI. I mean, I try to read about topical things that are relevant, but I try to read leadership books, business books, because a lot of times it's like, because I can very clearly see a case and then apply it to me, and then it makes me think differently about it. But I'll say, I want to honor Oskar. Oskar is, so one of my favorite books is The 6 Types of Working Genius by Patrick Lencioni, which is a simplified personality type for teams, but it can be for your spouse, for how to work with your family. I mean, it could be for anything, but Oskar is a wonder invention. So he asks like the big, like, what if we did this? Or why aren't we doing that? I mean, he can come up with some really out of the left field, out of the left galaxy ideas that are really spot on, but he just has to explain them, just to, how did you get there? And then he can come up with all these ideas, which is why we've always partnered really well. I'm invention discernment. So I have lots of ideas off of his big ideas, but then also I feel like a beautiful mind sometimes where I can see it, like all of it, like Tetris in my head. But honestly, like I learn a lot from Oskar, because he'll challenge something even just in a random text. He's like, dude, why is this happening? And I'm like, I don't know. I've never asked that before. Let me go read up on that, because I wouldn't have thought that. So I do think it's important to surround yourself with wonder people and invention people, even if they're not your day-to-day partners or your colleagues, because they might just ask, they're like, well, why would you do it that way? And you'd be like, what do you mean? Like, don't get defensive. Go, what do you mean? Well, why would you do it like that when this is the, like, oh my God, they're like, some of the best ideas can come from something silly, like, which is why it's always good to have other people that aren't on your team vet an idea or bounce something off. Take it with a grain of salt, but listen for the truths in there, because there is a grain of salt in there, for sure. But I try to, I have a lot of wonder people in my life. Oskar is one of those, and sometimes that's the best way to learn, because it prompts something you wouldn't have thought of. I'd also say just walk the shelf, like do the thing you're trying to figure out, like, because suddenly you're going to go, whoa, I thought this, and that's not how it works. And actually I found something else. Like I had the most fun prepping for a training where we literally walked through multiple categories on how Rufus and ChatGPT and Sparky were or weren't working for the category or the brand. And I wouldn't have done that as myself, because I wasn't the shopper for that category, but because we already do this and I got to do it for this training, I had to train others on it. I had to think through it differently. So maybe go in thinking, I've got to present this to my boss. What are my gaps? What are my opportunities? But like it's so dumb. Walk the shelf, right? Walk the tool, walk the tech, walk the shelf, walk the AI, whatever is, insert the thing you do, because there you will find a plethora of problems, opportunities, and things that you can learn about. Even if you don't get all the answers, it'll force you to figure something out you didn't know before.
But I think, in general, the good thing is you can actually learn out of anything.
Yeah.
Right. You can watch YouTube, you can watch a show, you can play a game. It doesn't really matter. Anything can be an inspiration if you just recognize it. Is it kind of aligning with your view? Is it shaping your view? Is it adding? Because I think fundamentally, I basically look upon my growing up. It's like how far we are from the future, what gets us closer to the future, right? And the challenge, what it is for brands is they really need to play with puppies like us, even for a little bit, to be able to kind of to open up their mind a little bit, like that there are bigger challenges. What we are dealing right now is fundamentally nothing what brands will have to deal in the future. And I give you like two silly examples. One of them is, let's say if we're going to start sending people into the space in an O'Neill cylinder, right? Which is basically, you can put 10 million people, from a 10 million people in, depending on the size, and basically shoot them into the space, right? How brand will function in O'Neill's cylinder or multi-generational spaceship? So that's number one. Or number two, what happens if we live in a post-money society? What brand value is? Like, where is then, how brand functions in that world, right? So like those challenges are fundamentally, 100 times bigger versus what we are dealing at the moment. And we feel like we are solving like the hardest equation in the world. But to be honest, it's just another step into that evolution, right? Because there's this great theory in cosmology, the great filter theory, that civilization, in order to succeed, has to reach specific steps, right? Like one of the steps that we all know is that the sun is expanding sooner or later. It's going to engulf Earth. So we as a civilization have to leave this planet, right? Because Earth will not be habitable anymore. Those steps will happen sooner or later. And I think, honestly, there is a little bit of a theory, and we need to kind of work on that. Maybe there is a great filter theory for brands, that the brands need to pass specific stages in order to flourish into the future. And one of the declines you actually see at the moment, which is like very apparent, is Apple, where it's completely kind of lost its way. It's can't figure out AI. People are realizing they don't need new hardware because the old one works good enough, etc. Right? And they are kind of looking for their purpose. And I think as any company, we have to kind of figure out is like, are we passing the next filter, or maybe we are knocking to the door that leads nowhere, right? We need to get lined up under, the right door to pass the next filter, so we can then actually pass the one after.
Oskar, you and I think, do this naturally, and by all means, we're not perfect at this. I mean, this is just, we get to do this in our first mover roles, but I think we naturally did this as change agents in companies, which again made people uncomfortable because we felt the freedom. Also, we were hired to lead change, even though we were hired to be puppies, even though nobody's wanted us, again, to leave surprises around the floor, right? So, but the reality is, you ask simple questions, right? Like, one, is what I'm doing getting you what I want? No, usually no. Then what do I need to do? Like, what do I need to do differently, right? That would make you learn something, right? Asking why until you can't go further back usually gets you to the root cause of something, right? Or a root driver of something. Even if it's not a bad thing, it could be a positive thing, right? It can also just be like, when we do trainings, every topic we say, what is it? Why is it important? So what does that mean for me? Now, what do I go do about it, right? You could do that. Watch a TV show, right? Some of them will not have an answer to these if you're watching, depending on what channel you watch, right? But or what TV series you're watching. But like, hey, what was the main message of that? Why is that important? So what does that mean for me? What could I do with that? You don't have to go do anything about it. But my point is, it may be nothing, but at least if somewhere in there's probably a thread of something that you could, and that's that intellectual curiosity that, to be fair, no one can give you. You have to go pursue that. Even if you're not naturally that way, you can nurture that. But those questions will get you way more rabbit holes to explore than you have time. But somewhere there's something that matters, and you'll see a theme. And that, for all you know, that could literally be your, I don't mean to go like spiritual, but that could be your soul's calling, right? I mean, that could be something in CPG that you were really meant to do. Like, hey, we weren't here just to sell more cereal online at Kellogg's, even though that was great. We were here to empower organizations to make change easy. Did we do it perfectly? No, because we were one freaking person inside the organization, but we had more power because of what they allowed us to do and what we weren't afraid to do because we were allowed to do it, even if we were just a wave of change, right? Because we've all seen it. There are like dynasties of change that come through, but every one of them had a role and a chapter of being the tip of the spear, and then the foundation setter, and then the momentum builder, and then the scaler. And so it's just like turnaround, CEOs that come in and just flip the company or merge them and then leave. Everyone has a role in that change process. So maybe your role is not, maybe I've seen a couple of people who've felt like they don't know what to do now because they led the change, right? And now they're scaling, and like, maybe you're not that person. Maybe you're the tip of the spear. Go back and be the tip of the spear on AI. Be the AI czar, right? Maybe you have to stay at your level for a little bit longer, but be the tip of the spear. That's your value. That's your calling. That's what you're really good at. Own it. Don't be afraid. You have to go beyond your competency.
Super cool. Jess, this has been a fascinating chat. Like, what it's made me realize is that the pace of change is only going to accelerate. And over the last, let's say, 10, 15 years, has just, within the e-commerce journey, has only just been the training ground to what's about to come. And what there's two sides to this. There's a scary side and there's a fun side. The scary side is too many organizations have not even embraced the first wave of e-commerce. And for what is about to come, it's like the last 15 years of change in about 2 or 3 years' time. So it's going to be very messy in terms of who the winners are versus who the losers are, which gives a massive opportunity for people who are actually change agents, who are actually in the thick of it and advising people on how to make these changes within their organizations to really embed themselves and implement all of this stuff. So I think for companies like First Mover, there's certainly a lot of work to get done, and I wish all the very best too. So how can people reach out to you guys and find out more about First Mover?
So you can always visit us. We are omni-channel. We are here 24/7 in every format. Oscar's working to replace us with AI, or at least enhance us with AI, and he's very close. But you can go to firstmovr.com. There is no E in First Mover, as there should not be an E in e-commerce. But we also, that was both the meaning, but also because there wasn't a First Mover with an E on GoDaddy when we got our domain name. But that worked out very nicely with our meaning too. But firstmovr.com, you can get all of the information on us and reach out to us easily. You can reach out to both of us at hello@firstmovr.com, or you can reach out to Oskar or Chris at firstmovr.com. You can connect with us on LinkedIn. If you go to firstmovr.com/events, you can sign up for any one of our tens of free virtual events. We also do in-person and other things too. More to come as there are opportunities to maybe make upskilling in this space as well. But we are always here to help, either just personally, riff with you. Hey, I have this challenge. What do you suggest? I'm thinking of this career change. What do you like? We love helping friends in the industry, new friends as well. But if we can help you professionally, just with our content, our events, or, help you with advisory, capability work, training, certification, workshops, you name it, we're here to be plug and play or end to end. I mean, we do it all, and we just love to help make an impact for you and your team. So we're always here to support.
Super cool. Thank you for having you guys on the show, and keep in touch.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was my conversation with Chris and Oskar. Let's recap those powerful insights. First, the uncomfortable truth about innovation. Most companies claim they want change agents, but like excitable puppies, they often get put in crates when they start shaking things up too much. The solution? Stop wasting for permission and build communities that drive change from the outside. We heard that striking confession from a CPG exec who admitted, we don't want to be first, we want to be fourth. But in today's AI revolution, that wait-and-see approach could be fatal. As Oskar warned us, this isn't a destination, it's a moving walkway where pausing means falling behind. The golden key? Change what you measure. Chris's mantra says it all. We are what we do, and we do what we measure. Want AI-driven commerce? Then measure AI-driven sales. Reward digital shelf performance. Make the metrics match the future you want. And about that AI magic bullet, both Chris and Oskar were clear. AI won't do the work for you. It's like a teenager behind the wheel, powerful but needs supervision. The real work still requires human strategy, oversight, and that critical eye to catch hallucinations. Most revealing was their take on modern branding. That dangerous assumption that everyone knows our products is costing brands billions in missed new buyers. The future belongs to those who organize by shopper missions, not just product categories. Think men cleaning sneakers with CF rather than just some home cleaners. Here's your challenge this week. Pick a product page and audit it ruthlessly. Is it speaking to real people or just checking boxes? Because as Chris says, the answers are waiting when you walk the digital shelf yourself. For more game-changing insights, visit firstmovr.com and check out their matrix framework. And remember, in this era of disruption, you're either moving forward or you're getting left behind. The choice is yours. Speak to you next time.